football rolls across a cracked concrete court just as the sun begins to rise over the outskirts of Paris. A boy no older than 8 chases after it with worn-out boots that have seen countless afternoons of football, while a chain-link fence rattles behind the goal and apartment blocks glow softly in the morning light. Hundreds of kilometres away, another child is already training on a dusty pitch in Marseille. Another is dribbling through cones in Lyon. Another is finishing school before rushing to evening practice in Lille. None of them know each other. None of them imagine they could one day wear the same blue jersey. Yet somewhere inside the French football system, the journey that could change their lives has already begun, long before television cameras, packed stadiums, or World Cup finals ever enter the picture. Every few years, football fans around the world find themselves asking exactly the same question. Where does France keep finding these players? Just as one generation appears ready to fade away, another arrives seemingly out of nowhere, bringing extraordinary speed, intelligence, and confidence that feels almost impossible to explain. One tournament introduces a fearless teenager, the next unveils another commanding midfielder, another elegant defender, or another unstoppable forward, until the rest of the football world begins to suspect that France is playing by entirely different rules. While other nations celebrate the emergence of one golden generation every decade, France continues producing elite footballers with astonishing consistency, making what should be extraordinary appear almost routine. To outsiders, it often looks like remarkable luck. They see Kylian Mbappé exploding onto the biggest stage before his 20th birthday, Antoine Griezmann reinventing himself into one of football's most complete attackers, N'Golo Kanté covering impossible distances every match, and younger stars like Eduardo Camavinga, Aurélien Tchouaméni, William Saliba, and countless others arriving almost immediately after them. The names continue changing, yet the story somehow remains exactly the same. Whenever the football world begins wondering who might replace yesterday's stars, France quietly introduces another extraordinary talent ready to compete at the very highest level. Eventually, people stop asking whether France will produce another superstar and begin asking only one question: who is next? The answer has surprisingly little to do with individual genius and almost everything to do with a system that has been evolving for decades. France never built its football identity around one legendary coach, one successful generation, or one revolutionary tactical idea. Instead, it invested in something far more valuable and infinitely more sustainable. It built an environment where exceptional footballers could emerge year after year, regardless of changing trends, different managers, or shifting tactical philosophies. The country's greatest achievement was never discovering remarkable players. It was creating a structure where discovering remarkable players became an everyday expectation rather than an extraordinary event. That structure begins long before children enter famous academies or sign professional contracts. Across France, football is woven into everyday life in ways that outsiders rarely notice, with thousands of local clubs acting as the first link in an enormous national network. On small pitches squeezed between apartment buildings, in quiet suburban parks and in local communities where football becomes part of childhood itself, coaches begin identifying qualities that statistics can never fully measure. Technical ability matters, but so do courage, imagination, resilience, and the willingness to solve problems under pressure. Long before anyone talks about international careers, the foundations of elite football are already taking shape. Perhaps the greatest strength of French football lies in its extraordinary diversity. Every region contributes something different, creating an environment where young players constantly experience contrasting styles, physical challenges, and tactical ideas. A technically gifted midfielder from Paris may grow up competing against physically dominant defenders from northern France, while explosive wingers from Marseille regularly face disciplined teams shaped by entirely different football cultures. Every weekend becomes another lesson in adaptation, forcing young players to discover new solutions instead of relying on familiar patterns. Without fully realizing it, they are developing the versatility that will later allow them to thrive against almost any opponent in world football. Competition, however, is what truly transforms potential into excellence. France produces so many talented youngsters that earning recognition demands constant improvement, because every promising footballer knows another equally gifted player is waiting for the same opportunity. There is no room for complacency inside a system where hundreds dream of reaching the professional game, but only a select few will ultimately succeed. Every training session feels meaningful. Every match becomes another chance to be noticed, and every small improvement can determine whether a player moves one step closer to an academy or quietly disappears from the pathway altogether. Instead of weakening young footballers, that relentless competition sharpens them. Scouting plays an equally important role, operating with remarkable efficiency across every corner of the country. Talent rarely remains hidden for long, because professional clubs maintain extensive networks capable of identifying promising players from remarkably young ages. Scouts travel constantly, watching local tournaments, youth competitions, and amateur matches that rarely attract public attention, searching not simply for the biggest or fastest children, but for those displaying unusual football intelligence and personality. They understand something many people overlook. Great footballers often reveal themselves through small details long before they dominate physically, making patience just as valuable as expertise. Yet perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the French model is that it never tries to create identical players. Unlike systems that prioritize uniformity above all else, France encourages individuality within a structured environment, allowing creative attackers, elegant midfielders, powerful defenders, and fearless goalkeepers to develop according to their own strengths, rather than forcing everyone into the same template. The result is a national team filled with footballers who possess completely different qualities while sharing the same technical standards, tactical education, and competitive mentality. Diversity does not weaken the system. It becomes one of its greatest advantages. By the time these young players finally reach professional football, the world sees only the finished product. Television cameras capture spectacular goals, breathtaking dribbles, and unforgettable World Cup performances, while millions assume that extraordinary talent simply appeared overnight. What remains invisible are the countless years of preparation, competition, and patient development that quietly shaped every decision made on the pitch. France never accidentally became football's greatest talent producer. It built a process so effective that the extraordinary slowly became ordinary, and hidden at the very heart of that process was a place that would eventually become the symbol of French football itself. Hidden among forests southwest of Paris sits a place that rarely appears on travel brochures, yet it has influenced modern football as profoundly as almost any stadium on earth. From the outside, Clairefontaine looks surprisingly ordinary, surrounded by quiet roads and open countryside that reveal little about what happens behind its gates. But inside those training fields, generations of young footballers have learned that talent alone is never enough. Every drill, every tactical session, and every conversation is built around a simple philosophy. Exceptional players are not created by chance. They are shaped through thousands of intelligent decisions repeated over many years until excellence becomes habit rather than ambition. Clairefontaine is often described as the heart of French football, but in reality, it is only the most visible symbol of a much larger machine operating across the entire country. What makes the French system extraordinary is not that it discovers gifted children. Every football nation does that. The difference is what happens after those players are found. Instead of rushing development or placing unbearable expectations on teenagers, France gradually exposes them to increasingly difficult environments where technical quality, tactical understanding, and emotional resilience evolve together. Coaches care as much about decision-making as they do about passing accuracy, encouraging young players to solve complex situations independently instead of memorizing rigid instructions. Mistakes are not treated as failures to eliminate, but as opportunities to accelerate learning, creating footballers who eventually arrive at the professional level already comfortable solving problems under enormous pressure. The journey is brutally competitive because every academy knows another talented youngster is waiting for the same opportunity. Training sessions resemble auditions, where every pass, every sprint, and every defensive recovery matters, not because coaches demand perfection, but because the overall standard never stops rising. Young players quickly understand that natural ability may open the first door, yet only consistency keeps it open. That environment creates an unusual mentality, where complacency becomes almost impossible, since tomorrow's training partner could easily become tomorrow's competition for a place in the national team. By the time these footballers reach adulthood, competing against elite professionals feels surprisingly familiar because they have spent their entire lives earning every step forward. France also benefits from something many countries simply cannot replicate: an extraordinary diversity of football backgrounds. Children grow up bringing different cultures, different styles of play, and different ways of seeing the game into the same academies, producing an environment where creativity constantly challenges structure instead of fighting against it. One player may arrive with exceptional flair developed in crowded street games, another with remarkable tactical discipline learned through organised club football, while a third combines physical dominance with technical confidence rarely seen at such a young age. Instead of forcing these differences to disappear, French coaches carefully blend them together, creating complete footballers capable of adapting to almost any tactical system in world football. The careers of France's greatest stars reveal the strength of this philosophy far better than statistics ever could. Kylian Mbappé did not emerge because the system was designed specifically for players like him. N'Golo Kanté did not become one of the world's finest midfielders because someone predicted his remarkable rise as a teenager. Eduardo Camavinga, Aurélien Tchouaméni, William Saliba, and countless others followed completely different paths, each possessing unique qualities that could never be copied or mass-produced. Yet, despite those differences, they all reached the highest level carrying the same foundations: exceptional technical education, tactical intelligence, emotional resilience, and an understanding that football is ultimately a collective game. The stars look different because the system never tries to manufacture identical players. It simply creates the ideal conditions for extraordinary talent to flourish. Scouting plays an almost invisible but essential role in keeping this machine alive. Every weekend, experienced observers spread across thousands of local matches, searching for details that rarely appear on highlight reels. They are not merely looking for the fastest dribbler or the strongest striker. They watch how children react after losing possession, whether they continue demanding the ball under pressure, how quickly they recognize changing situations, and whether they elevate the players around them rather than focusing only on individual success. Those subtle characteristics often predict future greatness far more accurately than goals scored at 13 years old, allowing France to identify football intelligence long before physical maturity levels the playing field. Another remarkable strength of the French model is its connection between youth development and professional football. Young prospects rarely feel isolated from the next stage because academies work closely with clubs that understand long-term development instead of chasing immediate results. Talented teenagers are gradually introduced to senior football at the appropriate moment, surrounded by experienced professionals who accelerate their learning without placing impossible expectations on their shoulders. Instead of forcing young stars to carry entire teams overnight, France allows them to grow naturally inside competitive environments where confidence develops alongside experience, dramatically increasing the likelihood that early promise eventually becomes sustained excellence. By the time these footballers arrive wearing the blue jersey of the national team, something fascinating becomes obvious. They may come from different cities, different families, and completely different personal stories, yet they instinctively understand one another's movements on the pitch. The shared football education developed over many years creates an almost invisible connection, allowing technically gifted attackers, intelligent midfielders, and composed defenders to function together with remarkable fluidity despite limited preparation time before international tournaments. France is not simply selecting the country's best players, it is assembling graduates from the same football philosophy, each contributing unique strengths while speaking the same tactical language. That is why replacing legendary generations has never become the crisis many expected. When one group of world champions begins retiring, another is already approaching its peak, because the production line never truly stops. Individual stars leave, coaches change, tactical trends evolve, and football itself continues transforming, yet the underlying system keeps generating players capable of adapting to every new era. France does not depend on miracles, because it has spent decades building something far more reliable than luck. It has built a structure where greatness is continually renewed, making every generation feel less like an exception and more like the natural continuation of everything that came before. Eventually, the rest of the football world stopped asking how France produced one extraordinary team. They began asking whether anyone else could ever build a factory like this. For decades, football nations across the world have searched for the perfect formula. Some invested billions into elite facilities, others copied successful tactical systems or hired famous coaches, believing the next breakthrough was only one innovation away. Yet despite all those efforts, very few have managed to achieve what France now does almost effortlessly. Every few years, another extraordinary generation appears, seamlessly replacing the previous one, until success itself begins to feel inevitable. It is not because France possesses more passion than everyone else, nor because it is somehow luckier. It is because while others concentrated on building great national teams, France concentrated on building a system that would never stop creating them. The influence of that philosophy now reaches far beyond French borders. Scouts, academy directors and federation officials from across Europe regularly study France's development model, hoping to uncover the hidden ingredient that keeps producing world-class footballers with astonishing consistency. England has modernized its academies, Germany has transformed youth development after painful failures, Portugal continues refining one of Europe's most respected talent pathways, and Belgium has invested heavily in coaching education, yet every country eventually reaches the same conclusion. You cannot simply copy the French system by building new training centres or rewriting coaching manuals. The true strength lies in decades of patient investment, trust between local clubs and national institutions, and a football culture that values long-term development over immediate success. What makes France especially dangerous is that the production line never depends on one superstar. When Zinedine Zidane retired, many believed French football would need years to recover, only for Thierry Henry, Patrick Vieira, and a new generation to carry the nation forward. Later came another wave, featuring Karim Benzema, Antoine Griezmann, Paul Pogba, and Hugo Lloris, followed almost immediately by Kylian Mbappé, Eduardo Camavinga, Aurélien Tchouaméni, William Saliba, Michael Olise, and countless others preparing to take the next step. Each generation looks different, each brings its own identity and style, yet all emerge from the same foundation. France does not replace individuals, it replaces eras. That continuity transforms the way France approaches international football. Many countries enter major tournaments, hoping their current golden generation can finally deliver a trophy before age begins catching up with them. France rarely carries that burden, because another generation is already developing behind the scenes. The pressure to succeed immediately becomes smaller when the future is constantly being prepared, allowing coaches to make decisions based on long-term balance rather than short-term desperation. Instead of fearing the end of a successful cycle, French football simply prepares for the next one, treating renewal as part of the process rather than a crisis to survive. Perhaps the most impressive achievement is that this system continues evolving instead of becoming trapped by its own success. Modern football changes rapidly, demanding faster decision-making, greater tactical flexibility, and increasingly complete athletes capable of adapting to multiple roles during the same match. France has responded by continuously refining its coaching methods, embracing sports science, advanced performance analysis, and individualized player development, without abandoning the principles that built its reputation in the first place. The factory never stands still, because standing still is the quickest way to fall behind. The real legacy of French football is therefore much larger than World Cup trophies or international rankings. It is the demonstration that sustainable success cannot be built around one extraordinary coach, one legendary player, or one unforgettable tournament. It must be built around an environment where excellence becomes normal, where thousands of children receive opportunities to develop, and where every generation leaves behind a stronger system than the one it inherited. That is far more difficult than winning a single championship, but it is also infinitely more valuable, because its effects continue long after medals have been lifted and celebrations have faded. Years from now, historians may remember France for producing some of the greatest footballers the sport has ever seen, but they will likely recognize something even more remarkable. Behind every spectacular goal, every breathtaking dribble, and every World Cup triumph stood an invisible network of coaches, scouts, academies, local clubs, and communities working together with extraordinary patience. They understood that greatness is never created in one magical moment. It is built quietly, piece by piece, over thousands of ordinary days that almost nobody notices until the results become impossible to ignore. That is why the rest of the world keeps searching for France's secret, hoping there is one revolutionary training drill, one tactical innovation, or one hidden formula capable of explaining decades of extraordinary success. But the truth is both simpler and far more demanding. France never built the world's greatest football factory by chasing shortcuts. It built it by creating a culture where talent is discovered early, developed patiently, challenged relentlessly, and trusted completely. Great teams can inspire an entire generation. Great players can change the outcome of a World Cup. But only a great factory can keep producing history long after yesterday's heroes have disappeared. And that is exactly what France has become.